Hi, everybody. It's Ryan from the NFT Art Collective, proud Bored Ape, and also House of Kiba member. And in this tutorial today, I'm going to show you how to use the source files that came with your Ape Dimtion card and take that to make high quality stills or even animated videos using Marmoset, which has a 30-day free trial and is only $15 a month if you'd like to subscribe. And you won't have to use Maya at all. Maya is far more complicated and it takes a lot longer to do this. And then also using a free program called Mixamo, which is a web tool from Adobe. So without further ado, let's get into it. First thing you want to do, if you haven't already, is download Marmoset. So go to marmoset.co. Go to Toolbag and download. Okay, so while that's downloading, I'm going to do a quick overview of the contents of the zip file that you get with your Ape Dimtion card. So you'll notice that you've got different folders than I do, and there's a couple reasons for that. The ones that start with an X down here are just ones that I've added for certain assets that I either want to import or export. But you're also going to see that we have different folders depending on which items or properties your ape has. So I've got the army hat, the leather jacket, a blindfold, and a cigarette. Those are the 4 objects that my ape has. In addition to that, you've got noise RGB folder. This is the fur folder. So I've got the noise fur on this ape, and you will have a different one for this. Beyond that, you've got the game ready ape and the print ready ape. We're going to ignore the print ready today. I don't know anything about the 3D printing yet. We'll get into that later. So go into the game ready ape file. What you're going to see is, again, it might look a little bit different, but you're going to have a Maximo file. This is the one that we're going to import into Marmoset. And so that's the one that's the most important. And that's the only one we're going to focus on for right now. So go ahead and launch Marmoset after you've installed Marmoset Toolbag 4. And continue your trial. We'll go over the important tools and windows as we go through the video, but for now, we'll show you this scene tab over here. If you've never used something like Unity or Maya, this might not be familiar to you, but it's pretty easy to follow. It's just a little hierarchy. You've got your scene, and then you have the objects inside of your scene. So right now, you've got the main camera, which is what we're seeing right here. You can see which camera you've selected up in this top left corner of this sort of view window. And then you've got the sky. And so if you were to turn that off, it would go dark, right? You can turn it back on. Down here, you see some of the options for the sky. We'll get into this later. Really not that important right now. But you can click this to make it small if you just want to hide it. So that's the brief overview. And you're going to see that this populates with more objects as we bring in our ape and all of our accessories. So this is a pretty easy program to use. The first thing we want to do is just drag and drop the FBX file. So the FBX file is the actual object itself, and then the textures are separate. So the first thing we're going to do is just drag our ape in. So if you just click inside of this with the left mouse button and try to drag around, you'll notice that you can't change the camera view because that's done with a modifier key. So what you want to do is hold down the Alt key, and then you can use the left mouse to kind of spin the camera around. And you can also then hold Alt and hold the middle mouse button to pan the camera left, right, and up and down. And then finally, if you, again, hold Alt, click and hold the right mouse button, and if you move your mouse up and down, it zooms in and out. Actually, left and right kind of does it too, but a little bit awkward. So up and down with your mouse to zoom in and out while holding Alt and the right mouse button. And you'll see that that set of controls is very common for any of the 3D programs. So that's all we'll do for now. If you click on the ape itself, you'll see that you get options over here that show some of the settings for the ape. And again, we're not going to get too much into that right now. You'll also see over here that when we drug in the ape, we now have this object, ape-maximo. And so that's like a parent object. And below it, you see that you have these children. So it's just showing that it's broken up. You've got the left eye, the right eye, you've got the body, and then the inner mouth. And so each of those is a different object or set of objects. And again, you can even open these up and it'll show you other options, but we're not going to get into that right now. So you can collapse this if you'd like. But again, now you see the Ape Maximo is in here, and click the plus to expand. Okay, so that's the ape. So what we're going to do now is take a look at the fastest way to get this animated and then rendered either out to a still or a video. And we're going to do the path of least resistance, like the easiest way it could possibly be done, with the least amount of complications. So let's say you have like a really simple ape. It's just the ape and maybe a hat. So go into that root folder that you've unzipped, and let's go to a simple accessory like the hat. So I'm going to double click in here, and it's really the same thing. Grab armyhat-game.fbx, not the print file, but the game file. Grab this and drag it over into your scene. You don't even have to drag it on the ape. It just goes, you'll see it clicks right onto the ape. And again, if you use some of your controls, I'm going to hold Alt, kind of spin the camera around, just take a look at the hat. Maybe I'll zoom in a little bit and then pan up, zoom in more. You can also use the middle mouse wheel to zoom in, even when you're not holding Alt. So that looks pretty good to me. I don't see any problems with that. So there you go. You've got an ape with a hat. That's really, really simple. But for now, that's all we're going to do, right? I'll add other accessories later and show you things that might become a bit of a complication. So you've got your ape and he's got his object on. That's the important thing. We're not going to do the texturing right now. We're going to do that later. Okay, so what you need to do is go to File, Export, Model File. Again, File, Export, Model File. Click that. For now, we're not going to go over these options and how they might affect things going back and forth between Marmoset and Mixamo, so we can just check them all for now, and then click Export. This is a pretty fast export, so you might have, a certain folder you want to put this in. I'm going to put this into a folder called Marmoset, and I'm going to call this Basic Ape Step 1. All right, we'll save that under that Marmoset. Okay, so now step 2, you're going to go to the website mixamo.com. Now, for some reason, I have some issues with this. Like if I just type in mixamo.com, it won't go there without giving me a security error. So you can go to https://mixamo.com or search on Google. And you will have to log in. I'm already logged in here. It's a free program, so I'm an Adobe member, and I just log in with my Google. But you can do that. This is from a test earlier. You can see kind of a preview of how good it's going to look when it's actually textured. We're not going to do this particular workflow right now. So what we're going to do, you won't see this if you haven't done a previous character. This is just a test. But again, you can see it looks, pretty nice. So this gives you just a little bit of a preview of what you can expect later. And it's cool. It's pretty cool. So go to Upload Character, and then you can either drag and drop that file or select it from your menu. But you want to use the one that we just exported. So I put it into Marmoset, and I called it Basic Ape Step 1. And open. And what it's going to do is upload. The file is going to take longer, depending on how complex the object is, but it really doesn't take very long to do this. So that was real time, and you can see that was very fast. And now it goes to a next processing step, and there are a couple of processing steps here, but it usually is really quick. So this is just a preview, really rough preview, and if you click these, you'll see it spin around the different axes, and that's just to verify that the ape is like kind of evened out. You can't import the ape that's already posed. It needs to be symmetrical, what they call it T-pose right here, also with the fingers spread apart. And so all that stuff is going to be put into this kind of, sort of an AI. The next step here is to add these little markers. So the first one is the chin, then you have the wrists. I don't know how precise it has to be. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I would probably try to spend a lot of time getting it perfect, but it's always looked good no matter what I do. I think the source asset is so high quality. The design is just very good. So no matter how quickly I've gone through this, it's always looked very good. And the high quality animations help too. But again, I think like the proportion and the aspect ratios of the ape itself are just really high quality. So it looks great when it's animated. And so you can see auto rigging right here. It says it can take up to 2 minutes. I'll cut and let you know how long it took, but sometimes it doesn't take quite that long. Okay, so here you go. You have a preview basically. And he's just going to kind of move around this little default look. And again, it looks great. So I'm just going to hit next. And then, yeah, it says that there's a little bit of a warning that it'll replace the previously uploaded character. You won't have that if you didn't have a previously uploaded one. So I'm going to do that. And again, you have similar controls in this. You don't actually have to use the Alt and right mouse button. You can just use the left mouse button to click and then drag around. You can do panning with the middle mouse button, up, down, left, right, zoom out with the middle mouse wheel. So again, pretty similar controls. And then over here on the left, you're going to see you had this set of options. You can do however many per page you want, 24, 48, 96. And I don't know how they always show up in this order for me. There's a lot of them. This swing to land's really cool because he does backflip. So if you just click on it, it automatically would show, your ape with this animation, and you can sort of pan around and see what it might look like. So that would look great, as an animation. It'd be a little bit more complex because you would have to do a rope and then animate the rope. That'll be maybe another tutorial. So for now, we're going to do something a little bit more simple. And you can look through this. It's a lot of fun to just, again, look at the way your ape looks as it moves. It's very cool. It looks amazing. So in the search bar up here, if you just click into the search, it'll show you that you've got some genres right here: combat, adventure, sport, dance, fantasy, superhero, and skinning test. I don't know exactly what that is. Probably shows the quality of your skinning, I guess. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to dance. I think the dance stuff looks really cool. It's pretty easy to use. They look good. You can find one that's a little bit longer too. I mean, some of these animations, like Flare here, this is the frame count, so you can see the frames counting and then the total number of frames. 30 is, not many frames. That's 1 second at 30 frames per second. So that's going to be a really quick animation. And so for this test, I would pick something that's longer. And so a lot of the ones that say hip-hop dancing tend to be longer, although there are some short ones as well. So let's see if we just do something like, some of these are pretty silly. Oh, yeah, that's a short one, maybe too short. But yeah, it's up to you. You pick whatever you'd like. Some of them, the animation doesn't work perfectly with your particular character. The ape has really long arms, and so like this one, if you look, actually the arm sometimes crashes through the body. The physics aren't. It's not doing really a perfect physics simulation. That's something we'll look at again in another video. This is gonna be a pretty simple thing. So, it depends on how much of a perfectionist you are. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, but some of these look fantastic without having to do any changes. This one's pretty cool. Unfortunately, they're all just called hip hop dancing. Like they don't have a more specific name. So I've sort of been identifying them by the number of frames. This has 409 frames. I like it. Looks pretty good. Let's just move on. So all you got to do now, there's options over here that you can actually play with that will change, I guess, the style of the dancing. I really haven't messed with this yet. I know that if you turn dip down, he will dip down lower. So these are motion captured, I think, from real people. They look really good. For now, this is great. Let's just click download. And you're going to have some options here. We're going to leave a lot of this alone. FBX binary with skin. I'm going to go to 60 frames per second. If you have more frames, it's going to take longer to render, like twice as long to render 60 compared to 30. But it gives you more options if you want to slow it up or speed it down a little bit more smoothly in post-production. And I'm going to add this to music maybe later. So I actually want the 60 frames per second. Just give me a little bit more flexibility. Keyframe reduction, I'm not an expert on this. I've done it with none, and it's been fine. I've also done it with uniform. I'm going to try it with uniform right now. So it's going to prepare the download, and then you'll download the FBX file. And again, this is pretty fast as well. It really doesn't take very long. You'll see, again, Hip Hop Dancing 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this over into probably that, I guess, the Marmoset folder. So I'll do that real quick. So what I'm going to do now is rename that file that I just downloaded from Hip Hop Dancing 2. And I'll say HH Dancing. And I'm going to do 409F for 409 frames. And I'll do this from Mixamo. Just to keep these really clear, that's just kind of a thing I like to do. Okay, now we can minimize the web page. And now what you want to do, if you want, you can save this session. And you probably should save it, I guess. But I'm going to close it and just do a new scene. This is really just the quickest way to do this, but save as many versions as you want. Save often, especially when you're using a program that you don't know very well. But what I'm going to do is now drag in this hip hop dancing into a clean session again. I just restarted. You can see over here, it's just the render engine, the main camera in the sky. I'm going to drop my hip hop dancing ape right into Marmoset. And this may take a little bit longer because now it's not just an object, it also has animations. Okay, so again, it really didn't take very long. You've got your ape right here. Now, if you look down below, you've got a timeline, and the timeline is in seconds, and you also see down here you've got frames per second. Well, I mean that's actually interesting. I did 60 frames per second on the export. I'm gonna put this back at 60 keyframe times. Okay, well, to tell you the truth, I'm not sure. I'm just going to click no. I don't know. For some reason, it's interpreting it as 30 frames per second. I guess it's fine. The main thing is, how does it look? So yeah, I mean, he looks pretty good, right? He's doing his dance, and again, you can move the camera around with all those controls like we talked about earlier, and you can see that this default lighting, right? And we can play with that later, but for now, we are just going to use the default. Okay, so you got a dancing ape. The space bar does not stop. I'm used to that from video editing programs. So you got to come down here and hit pause, and you can scrub around this timeline. And that's a helpful thing too as you start to work with your background and some of your textures and things. Okay, so that's the next thing we're going to do. Again, we assume that this is a very basic ape. We brought it into Marmoset. We added the objects, the hat, and then we exported from Marmoset. We brought it into Mixamo, where we did our animation, exported another FBX out of that. Now we brought that dancing one back into a clean session in Marmoset. So the last thing that we really need to do now is add the textures. And this is the part that is so much easier than Maya. I actually had to go through and do this for Maya for the other tutorial I'm working on after having done it in Marmoset. And it was like, oh man, it's bad. So all we have is the army hat. So you're going to go to the army hat folder from that root folder in the zip file that you expanded. And what you want to look for are the Arnold textures. Those are the textures that go right into Marmoset. So double click on that, and you're going to see you have these different files. These are all needed to get the highest quality texture. Some of them show the color, some of them are like the reflectivity, like how reflective it is or how absorptive the material is. So this all goes into lighting and render engines, and it's best to go ahead and put them all on, especially when it's so easy. So anytime you're going to texture an object, you first need to click on that object in your scene. You can see that the hat kind of glowed green there for a second. You can also see that it's selected over here in your scene window. So then I'm going to right click on the hat and do select material. This is not expanded over here. So if we come here and press this button, again, let's go back and click on the hat, right click, select material. You're going to see down here, these are open by default here. You've got normal map, albedo map, which is your color. Okay, that's the actual color file. Then roughness and metalness. Well, if you look in your folder here, you've got all those. Base color matches up with your albedo map. See this color section right here. You've got metalness down here, roughness right here, and the normal map is the top one. The only one that we don't use is height. I don't know what that's for, to be honest. We'll come back to that later. In the Hawk tutorial for Maya, they don't use it, so I don't think it's required. But again, maybe it squeezes out a little bit more detail and quality. I'm not sure. But this is super easy to do. So all you got to do, grab your base color, drag it down to the texture square on the albedo map. Then grab metalness, drag it down to metalness. Grab your normal, drag it to the normal. Grab roughness, bring it over to roughness. That right there is so much faster than Maya, it's ridiculous. Now, when you look at your ape, you'll see that the hat looks pretty cool. If you zoom in, again, this is default lighting, so it's not maybe the most flattering light, but you can really start to see that it's starting to take shape. This might not look good in the tutorial in the render on YouTube, but it's cool. You've got a lot of gradations and textures here. It looks, again, AAA. This stuff looks really good. So that's the hat. The next thing is the actual ape body itself. So if you click on the ape, you'll see how, again, it lights up like that. And over here, it's selected the body. So that's perfect. All you're going to do, right click, select material. Now, again, bring up the folder that you had a minute ago. Let's see, we can make this smaller so we can see our ape a little bit better. So now be careful you don't put the same texture on, right? You want to go to a different texture. You want to go to the fur folder. So for mine, noise RGB, yours could be blue or red. Click on that. Click on Arnold textures. And it's the exact same thing. You've got base color, goes over to your albedo map. Again, it says color right here if you forget. You've got your metalness down here under reflectivity. You've got a normal map, which shows up under surface, under this little surface tab. And then finally roughness, which shows up under micro surface. And all of this goes into, see right there, it changes a little bit with every step. If you come back over here and look at your ape, you'll see that there are just a couple of things that are missing. The Maximo ape is rigged in a certain way. It's a little bit different than like the other Maya ape. But you've got a couple of other things. You've got the eyes right here. So you can click on an eye. And again, you need to assign the material. So select material. And I'm going to Alt-Tab over to my folder here. So again, go to the root of your source files, and we're going to select the Game Ready Ape folder. This one, the folder that had your Maximo file, the one that we started with in the very beginning, also has some default textures. And these are the ones that fill in the eyes and the inner mouth. So we're on the eyes right now, then Arnold, and again, it's the same thing. Take your base color, drag it over to the albedo map under albedo. Take the metalness, drag it under metalness map under reflectivity. You can see the eyes starting to get filled in here. Grab the normal PNG, drag it over to the normal map under surface. And finally, roughness PNG under microsurface, roughness map. And so that right there is the eyes. Last thing would be the inner mouth. So actually we can go to the folder, again, Game Ready Ape, default texture, inner mouth, Arnold textures. These are going to be, you can see like the tongue and the teeth and the inner mouth, right? And that's going to be mapped around that 3D object. It's pretty cool. So what we want to do here, you could try to select the inner mouth. You might find it actually a little bit difficult to do that. Oh, well, there, I nailed it. But you could also just select it over here, right? Select inner mouth. And then you can come over and right click and do select material. And you'll see that it goes back to nothing. So we're going to Alt-Tab to bring that folder back up. And again, drag it over. We've got the base color to the albedo. We've got metalness to metalness. Normal to normal under surface, and then roughness to roughness over here. So right there, that's filled it all out. You know, we're probably not really going to see the inner mouth right here. If you had posed your ape where the mouth was open, right, then when you texture, the inner mouth textures will matter. So I went ahead and just put them in there. Our ape's mouth is not going to move because that wasn't part of the animation. Had that been part of the animation, you would need to do this as well. Or if you had posed him with that, which we'll get into in another episode, then again, you would need to use this inner mouth texture. So right now, you've got an ape, he's got his textures, and he's animated. And if you click play right here, boom, he moves, he dances, he looks good. Right. Okay. Again, it's very basic lighting, but I mean, you could basically export this video if you wanted. You could position your camera however you want. If you want it to really, really far away, if you want it really close, but you would position this as a single camera wherever you want, and then you could actually render. You could also do some stills. So if you wanted to do a shot like this or get, all cool and creative, whatever that means for you, really it helps when you get better lighting on. But you could grab a shot like this even. Okay, so now I just want to show you a couple of settings in this viewport that you can tweak. You may need to do this for performance. This is a pretty beefy machine. It's a few years old. It only has a Titan X video card, but it's also an i9 with 128 gigs of RAM, and the Titan, I think, has 12 gigabytes of video RAM. So it's a pretty good computer. I've been running the main camera at full quality here in this viewport. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure if this impacts the render quality or if it's just the viewport. I'm not sure, but I'm going to run it at full quality here. The other thing, if you go into the setting, the gear icon up here, you'll see this, and this definitely makes a difference in the viewport, at least. Viewport setting, resolution. If you go to standard to high DPI, like, again, you may not see it in this video because of the compression on the internet, but if you click high DPI while you're looking at the eyes in particular, you'll notice a difference. All the textures and the lighting are just better. They really are. So, especially in the eyes, the reflections are so much better. So there's some other options in here I'm not going to get into, but that right there would be enough. I mean, honestly, if you just wanted to export a picture, that's pretty cool already. There's other things you can do to tweak it, but that would be the quickest way. You would just go to render up here at the top and do all images. And it only does render one image. So I'm not sure, TB render 001. In some programs, you really can do each image in this frame sequence, right? A frame sequence, single frames, one picture for each rather than a single video. So we'll look at that later. But this is just one. So if you want to still, this looks good as is. And if I make it a little bit bigger, the eyes here actually don't look maybe quite as good. Okay, I'm back. So we talked about the render that you can do. There's definitely a lot of render settings here. The viewport did look a little different to me. I thought it looked better than the still that was rendered. So I'm going to go into the render settings and see what we can squeeze out here. To do that, you can actually go up here to the object render, the render engine, I guess, basically for this scene. And you look at some different things. One, there's a whole box of lighting options. And these are going to have a huge impact on both the quality and sort of the look or feel or texture of the image, as well as the render time. Especially depending on what kind of GPU you have. So, move this stuff as you'd like, but realize that sometimes it's going to take a long time to render. So what I'm going to do here is I want to do ray tracing, which is just a more advanced way to process light and the way that light bounces off of objects and then hits other objects as well. So if you click it on, if you look at the ape, I'm going to click it on, you see that there's a big difference in the look of it, right? This looks almost more cartoonish. Now, this looks more realistic. Look at the shadow underneath the hat, right? I mean, there, it doesn't even really have a shadow, right? But now, the hat really is blocking. So you get a much, much higher level of realism by going down to lighting and using ray tracing. I bet if you crank bounces up, that gets even better, especially if you have a lot of objects and things for light to bounce off. But again, that probably really increases your render time. The viewport right here, so I assume that this is more viewport settings. You've got denoising and stuff like this. Again, I'm going to keep everything on high. I'm not going to mess with things that I don't really understand too much. I assume that using cascades is another thing that looks even cooler. Higher quality directional lights in large scenes. We're not going to worry about that now. Maybe it's the way like shadows compound on each other with multiple light sources and objects. Ambient occlusion, again, another thing. We're not going to mess with that. So I think we're good. This looks really cool on the lighting. So I'm just going to close this lighting tab. Come down to output. So output here, here's where you got some options. So you've got your format. I like to do TIFF sometimes, but I don't know. I'm not sure which one would be the best. You've got some Photoshop files. JPEG or PNG, probably fine for just simple stuff. Actually, did you see it does change the... Look at the viewport changes just a little bit. I don't know. We're going to go with PNG for now. Samples. Render samples per pixel. Higher res improved quality, but take longer to render. Again, so you can crank this up to 512, 1024, 2048, whatever. It'll just take longer. It might look even better. Then denoising. And you can click here to actually go ahead and then render that image. So let's try that. And then this will, render this one image. It looks basically as good as it does in this screen. Open image location. So that one was the one that was just on here at 813, the TB render. So that still not quite as good, to be honest. So I'll dig into this later. Look, if you're just putting this on, the internet, it's not going to matter that much, to be honest. Um, okay, so I am a bit of a perfectionist. I'm going to show you really quickly how we can get this to look better. If you look at the, again, under render settings, little gear up here, and then under output tab, I'm going to crank the resolution up. Um, I don't know. Again, unless you have an old computer, really not any reason to not do uh, at least 4K. So 3840 by 2160. You're just doubling the 1080p values, 1920 by 1080. And change the format to EXR 32-bit, especially if you have something like Photoshop. This is going to look just better. And then render samples per pixel. I don't know. This is a still, so I'm going to do 1024. I'm going to quadruple it. And it makes more sense maybe to do more samples when you have a higher resolution as well. So we could even do whatever. Let's do 2048. Okay, 2048, and then I'm going to change the output format again to EXR 32-bit. So this is very high quality. We're going to do render image. And you see this is taking quite a bit longer. I did a test with this a second ago at 1920 by 1080, EXR 32-bit, but only the 256 samples, and it was very fast. So you can see how long this single frame is going to take, maybe literally a minute. And so if you were to export an animation at this quality, you multiply that by the number of frames that you have in your animation, right? And so I think we started off with 400. And so if it takes a minute each, that's 400 minutes. And that's a lot of time. Okay, so that did take about a minute to render this super high quality file. And now if you go to open image location, you'll see this file, tbrender.exr. I'm going to double click that and it'll open up into Photoshop. And I'm going to kind of just show you how good this looks. It would make an even bigger difference if you have, again, really complex textures, complex lighting, if you have fog or something like that in your scene. All that kind of stuff will benefit even more from using this really high quality stuff. Okay, so now you can see, again, I'm looking at the eyes here, especially on the shadows. It's such higher quality now. And I should be able to zoom in as well. And you can see, if I zoom in this far, it doesn't look quite as good in the eyes. But you can zoom in like this, and it looks fantastic. I mean, the quality, again, of the lighting and the reflections in the eyes are really good. And the textures on the hat as well. And everything, even the teeth, you can see some marks. So yeah, it looks very cool, and that's even, again, zoomed in. This is a 4K image. So that's great. You could really be done there. We'll go back into, I'm going to change the render settings so they're not quite so crazy. Well, no, I'm just going to leave it. Okay, so what I want to do now is show you, I want to make this look a little bit better. How can we do that? Just to kind of spruce it up a little bit. If you click the sky object in your scene, then you'll be able to do some cooler things. Right here, right now the mode is on ambient sky. And that really is just like, it's almost like you're in like a dark room that then has kind of a sphere of light where it's brighter on one side than the other. So at least you're getting some shadows and things. It's not just like a full bright white room from every direction. But we can do better than that. If you want, you can do a color background. And so you're still going to have your shadows and lighting and things, but now it's like almost like the room is sort of like a cyc wall with a single color. So, this is obviously up to you. You can do whatever you want. If you click color right here, you can set it to, again, whatever color you want. You can kind of see what that looks like. And that's cool. It's your choice. One thing that you could do as well is under this skylight box right here, if you expand this tab, you can do an image. And so here you see they actually have like this sort of 360 image. It's a default. It just comes with it. So if we go with that, you'll just change this mode on the backdrop from color back to sky, because this is your skylight. You just happen to have chosen an image. And so now it's like, oh, that's cool. He's in a parking garage. And at that point, again, you can come back to this mode and you can start sort of panning it around and like placing him sort of in this scene. And so part of it is that you're moving him around and you could even rotate and things like that. Like I'll zoom out and show you that really quickly. Um, you would click on the ape itself now, not the camera. So you can see if you just click the whole ape here, the whole object, it selects the whole object. Now, this is the next set of important controls for these 3D programs, W, E, and R. And so when you click the ape and you click W, you'll see this little transform come up right here. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. Which you can also translate, sorry, which is also an option up here in this toolbar window. But again, the hotkey is W, and it's almost the same in all these programs. So if you move this around, it'll just move him in those directions, right? Translate his position in space. So a combination of moving him around like this, and also with, if you click E, it's a rotation. The way the rotation works is a little bit more complicated, but you'll see how these different orientations are lighting up, these rings. And so if I want to rotate him horizontally, I'll just go over this green ring until it turns yellow, and then click and drag, and it rotates him around, right? Pivots him around. And so by some combination of rotating him around and translating him left, right, up, and down, also maybe scaling, which is your final tool. If you click R, it'll get you scaling, or if you click this button right here, you'll do scale. And what you want to do on scale is actually grab this middle cube, the white cube, click and hold, and when you drag it up or down, he will change size. So I'm not going to get into how to make this look really cool. It's hard because so much of it depends on the environment you're in and the lighting and all of that. And you have to get into like camera positioning and things. See, it's funny. It looked like he was maybe the right size, but then when you move it to another view, so there's a lot to making this look really cool. But even just like zooming in with the right background and moving the camera to where you want it, you can get some cool stuff. So that would be one way to do it with an image in the background. Okay, so another option would be to do a solid color, but not a random one, maybe one that's from your ape. And so I took my just the regular ape picture into Photoshop and made sort of a little palette with the different colors. I won't show you how to do that. It's not that hard. Or you could really just import your own ape and then use like a color picker in this. But what you can do basically then is import an image. So I have this like color palette that I made, right? And so that's going to come right here. Like I don't really want to make that color palette the background here, but what you can do is don't do sky mode on the backdrop, but instead do color mode, right? And then when you click on color here, you can do this color picker, right? If you click this button down here, it enables you to use a color picker outside of the like the only window that you're in. So if I click this and then come over here, I can choose one of these to be the background. And so now that's more like it's matching, the ape itself. And I come over here again and kind of maybe like pan and move the camera around, and you can see the lighting's not like quite as dramatic now. But again, click sky here. Maybe you want a different color, so click in the swatch, and again click there for the outside color picker, and we could do something more bright or whatever. Maybe one of these doesn't even really look very good with him. That's probably his fur color. So it's up to you. There's a purple background. So yeah, it's fine. Like I said, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, but I'm not going to worry about it for now. So again, if you just hit play right here, you see that you've now got him dancing. And so you're going to want to move that camera around to find like a really good spot to show this off, no matter where he moves, in that animation. I really don't love this. I don't love the color, and we could do a lot better job with some of this. But that's it. That's really all you have to do. So now what you would do is, again, click in the render settings, and instead of the image, you can collapse this part of it. And now we really only want to deal with the video. So again, I'm going to do 4K. 3840 by 2160 And maybe this is like a menu of, yeah. So, 3840 by 2160 4K. MPEG 4 is not going to look great, you know. So I'm going to imagine that if you do JPEG or PNG or any of these down here, that it's going to be an image sequence where you literally get one image per frame. And then you're going to have to take those into a video program like Premiere or something like that and string them all together. And so later, that's what I will do. But for now, video, you only have two choices: MPEG 4, MP4. Look, I mean, it's probably fine. It's going to get compressed and crushed and not look great on Facebook or Twitter anyway. Vimeo, maybe you can get it to look a little bit better, but your choices are AVI lossless, which would be gigantic. I mean, this would be a huge file at 4K, gigabytes, huge. So we'll just do MP4. And we got 4K MP4 compression quality, applies only to compressed video. Higher values will produce larger files that look better. So I don't know. I'll crank it to 100 because that's what I do. Samples, I'll leave it at this. Denoising quality, if we're going to do anything like that, then I want it to be high quality. So I'm just going to do that. And then I'll click render video, and it's going to render this right to my desktop. I actually don't know how long this is going to take, so I'll time it, and I'll come back in a second and let you know. So honestly, I've never used Marmoset yet to export a video. It's looking like it's going to take a long time to do this, so I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to worry about it for now. I'm just going to cancel. But that's all you would have to do. I mean, that's it. You're going to eventually get a video out of that, and you can upload that video, and you're done. So if you want to stop there, you can. If you want to continue to move forward with me, I'm going to add some other objects to the ape. I'm going to show you what happens when you have a couple of objects that actually clash, and you need to move one. So we actually have to step back to the step that we did before the animation, right? Because we want to add all of the objects to our ape before we animate. All right, you can't add the jacket after you've already animated. So we're going to step back, and we're going to get in more detail again about some ways to kind of tweak the placement of objects and what to do if you have some problems, some things that might not work out quite perfectly, going back and forth from Marmoset to Mixamo. So, yeah. Keep watching, or thanks for joining, and I'll have more videos coming up soon. Okay, so now we're going to do a fully decked out ape, something that's more complicated and something that actually has a few complications on this round trip between Marmoset and Mixamo. So I am going to start from the beginning here and show you how quickly this can be done as well. You've got your folder, and we're going to go into the Game Ready Ape and start with our ape Maximo or Mixamo file. You see that it brings him in right there. Now, we're going to go to that root folder again, the one that you unzipped. We're going to start from the top, Army Hat. Double-click into that, drag over the Game FBX. Army Hat Game FBX, just drop it, goes right in place. Back to the root, Punk Jacket. I love this one. Punk-Game FBX, drop it in, jacket's on. Back to the root, the Blindfold. Blindfold-Game.fbx, drop it in, boom. Back to the root, we got a cigarette. Drop that cigarette in. All right. Now for my ape, that is all the objects that it has. So if we look at this again, I'm going to hold Alt, left click, and I'm going to zoom, kind of look around. So one thing that I notice is, and again, this happens between the different programs. It's the geometry is a little bit different, the translation. The cigarette is not quite in the right spot. That's the first thing that jumps out to me, right? It's too high. So all you have to do is click on the cigarette. And if you have any trouble clicking on it for any reason, come back over here to the left and just click on the cigarette right here. And then again, hit W to switch, or click up here to your translate tool, right? And you can click on that right there. You want to click the object right here. So then you can just move it around a little bit, move it up and down. And you see that it's actually longer. So it really was just the vertical orientation was off a little bit. You can see it kind of going down into the lip. Again, this is however tricky you want to get with it. I'm not going to be too perfect here, but I'll get it better. So there, it's like kind of pressing into the lip just a little bit. I'll zoom around and just look. That's definitely better, and it's certainly fine for now. Click outside if you just want to see what it looks like. Maybe it could go further into the lip. I don't know. You can move it over to the left or right, whatever you want to do. Okay, so the next thing that I see is that we've got something called crashing, and this can happen with different objects that clash. I mean, think about all the properties, all the different objects and combinations you might have. So it's really impossible for House of Kiba to make source files that somehow work with all of those combinations. I suppose maybe a certain kind of software could use physics or something, but I don't think that even exists. So we need to manually fix this before we send it over into Mixamo for animation. And so we're going to do something similar here. Basically, the hat needs to come up higher, right? This bandana wouldn't come over the hat like this. It's odd. So you can just click on the hat, and you already had your translate tool chosen. So again, you can hold Alt, and then I'm using my middle mouse wheel to scroll up. And so what I'm going to do is now just left click and hold on this up arrow. And I'm really going to drag it up. And what I'm looking for is where the rim of the hat meets the blindfold. And again, I'm not going to get it perfect, but like that's pretty good right there. And I'll zoom out and kind of pan around. And so, it's tall. It's like it's on the top of his head. Some people wear a hat like that, but it looks fine. And if you look in the back, like it also looks fine here with the knot. Like it's believable that the knot would come out from here, right? So that looks good to me. I don't really see a problem with that. And so that's my more complex model, right? And so now what we want to do is we're going to go into an export again. So this I am going to save this scene as, so this is like test part 2, all objects. All right. And then we're going to go to File, Export, Model File. And again, we're going to select just all the options. And we had a crash in Marmoset. That is why we save. So, yeah, reload Marmoset. It doesn't crash as much as Maya in my very brief experience of like 5 days, but it does crash. That's why we save often. Even if I haven't been, you really should. So right there, we don't have to do that at work anymore. Now, File, Export, the model file. And yeah, everything, export. Okay, so I think that's good enough for now. We could cover more here. I could get into some details on lighting and camera movements, doing different backgrounds. We covered that a little bit earlier. I think that's better for another episode. I need to actually learn this tool a little bit better anyway. I actually kind of know Maya more at this point. But I think that should give everybody a pretty good start. You know how to do some cool stills, how to do animation. There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot that you can play with. Should get everybody started. And I will come back and do more tutorials on how to take this to the next level and really make something that's very cool. Maybe add some music and really get creative with it. So thanks a lot for watching. Like and subscribe and all of that. And please share this on Twitter. You can find me at NFT Art Co. if you didn't already find me through Twitter. Share this stuff and have fun. Be patient, have fun. Use Google to search if you have any problems. Otherwise, reach out to me or somebody else and see if we can help. So thanks a lot. Have a good one.